Good evening. You are watching Legal Help Desk. This show is about making the law work for you by giving legal advice on topics that matter to you. I'm Attorney Karen Jimeno.
And I'm Attorney Rod Nepomuceno. Tonight, we'll discuss the separation of church and state.
Our guests for tonight are former Senator Rene Sagisag and Attorney Amado Valdez, Chairman Emeritus of the Philippine Association of Law Schools. Good evening and thank you for being with us, gentlemen.
Good evening, Dean. Good evening,
We have a very intimidating lineup of
I know.
guests.
I know. I'm already nervous.
We have a former Dean, former Senator.
And I might say an intimidating topic because you know, this is a huge topic, especially in light of the papal visit.
Ang dating ba namin mga terorista?
Yes.
Terror teacher.
Yes.
Pero because in light of the papal visit, and you know, there are a lot of questions on social media, whether we gave a due benefit to the Catholic Church, and you know, calling 5 days off. Mga ganun,
But first, let's
discussion,
clarify.
No?
What is this whole concept about separation of church and state, and was this observed given the preparations that the government and the whole country gave for the papal visit?
Yeah, maybe we'll start off with the explaining of the principle of the separation of church-state, Senator.
Well, may cultural factor yan dahil, Karen, nung unang taong ko sa Harvard Law, gulat ako, I was in the classroom, Good Friday.
Okay.
Kasi yun ang kultura dun dahil mga Hudyo yata ang dominant daw doon. And Felix Frankfurter said in one case na one belonging to my minority cannot be insensitive to religious freedom. Ngayon naman, si Pope, head of the church, head of his state then.
So,
Kaya like in 1933, nagkaroon din ng Eucharistic Congress. Ang tinutulak dyan yung secular aspect. Kaya incidental lang itong nangyayari na mga holidays, etc. Dahil hindi yun nangyari lang sa Quiapo, ilang milyones daw yun. So our country cannot be insensitive then to the feelings of a vast majority of Filipinos. So they can always challenge it. Dahil yan din ang ginawa noong 1933.
Okay.
And the Supreme Court came out on the side of secular activity, incidental lang.
What do you mean by, Senator, by when you say that the separation of church and state shall be inviolable as per the Article 2, Section 6 of the Constitution? What does that exactly mean? Maybe, Dean, maybe you'd like to give it a shot.
Yeah, yung separation of church and state, from my view, because of the historical context, this is protection of government from the church. Remember yung Inquisition, kasi for hundreds of years, evolution ng power of governance started with the divine right of kings. And then, na-capture ng church yung divine right of kings. Actually, naging proxy na lang yung king. It was actually divine right of the Pope of governance. Until the church itself committed abuses with the Inquisition.
Right.
So as a reaction to that, it's one of the most civilized concepts, itong prescription of separation of church and state. Kaya hindi sinama sa Bill of Rights yan Sinama sa Declaration of Policy. Right. Because Bill of Rights is more of protection of the individual from the state. Pero inilagay sa article earlier you mentioned as another declaration of principle because we have to always protect the government from the intrusion of
faith
the church,
or religion,
whether belief or non-belief, which could happen in the future, that they will impose non-belief. So the government must always be protected from that.
Well, Dean Amado and former Senator Rene, let's go to present-day circumstances. For instance, when I was in law school, we had a professor that would start off classes with a prayer. And I went to University of the Philippines, which is a state university. So in that case, one of our classmates complained and said that we should not be starting off with a prayer. And in the end, I think the complaint was ruled upon favorably because we stopped having those prayers. Is that an example of a separation of church and state? And tama ba yung basis naman na, kasi then, you're also violating perhaps the freedom of religion of the person or the professor who wants to pray before class. So, ano yung tama dito sa ganitong situation?
Well, ang constitutional and institutional arrangement natin, to the extent possible, accommodation. Kaya nung ako nasa Rizal High, halimbawa, may option kami to attend religious instruction in a building across Rizal High. So, ganun din na kailangang walang hostility ang state against any religion, but it should not favor any religion either. It should not have an established church. No? Yan ang establishment clause na nga eh. Kaya dito, each culture will have to find its way. We'll have to find the Filipino arrangement. Kasi dito sa atin, minsan pupunta ako doon sa lumang courthouse ng Makati. Wala akong daanan dahil nagmimisa. Immaculate Conception daw. Eh yun, napakahigpit sa Amerika. Bawal ang mga santo, bawal ang mga... dito, bawat building na nakikita ko, meron santo eh.
So in the Philippine context po, basically what you were saying earlier, we shouldn't favor. So in a way, you can't have a state-sponsored religion. Is that correct? So in a nutshell, if I will simplify that, perhaps, is it possible, let's say, for tax money to go to something that's religious? Let's say if the Philippine government, for example, donates something to the church for the building of a church, bawal po ba yun? Bawal yung mga ganun?
Building a church?
Or let's say you're donating a piece of land so that the Catholic Church can build a church there. Bawal yung mga ganun.
Out of the question yata yun.
So
What if rehabilitating? For instance, we had the Bohol earthquake, and one of the churches that was really destroyed is the Lubok Church. So, kung government funds ang gagamitin para i-rehabilitate yon on the argument that this is very important for the Filipino culture and history, is that justifiable? Or will it,
funds?
yes,
Government.
to rehabilitate
church.
and
Yeah.
reconstruct yung church sa Bohol na nasira ng earthquake?
I would doubt the constitutionality nun.
Okay.
Dahil
Unless it was a historical
sisipa ang mga ibang religions, hihingi din ng similar funding. Kaya I would personally doubt if that would be a constitutional arrangement. Yung to rebuild, say, a church destroyed by Yolanda.
Unless it's a tourism site and a heritage site that...
May ganun ba exception
may mga
na
ganun ba
sasabihin nila tourism or heritage
Dean,
site?
what would you say in the situation like that?
You can answer all those questions doon sa basic philosophy ng separation of church and state. As I was saying, ito yung institutional partnership eh. If you speak of that provision, it speaks of the church as an institution being in partner with the state as an institution.
Okay.
So with this together, ayaw na natin as a matter
You
of
cannot have that,
policy. Yung sinasabi mo, I think you said about tourism,
Yes.
saka heritage. To a certain extent, that it will preserve some cultural heritage. Kasi sabi nga ni Senator Sagisag, it's cultural also. No? So there will be some balancing of interests. And if the interest of culture and preserving the history of the country as far as this is a human race, di ba? There is humanism in the Filipino spirit, and this was nurtured through the Catholic faith. And nag-i-evolve naman yan eh. Later, it will no longer be Catholic faith, but another faith, faith. So, later, like in Europe, most of the churches are more historical sites. Nobody or very few use the church for worship. So later, pupunta ka sa Bigan, for example, pupunta yung mga turistang Spanish or European Catholic pupunta. This is how Catholicism was practiced in the past. So if you want to restore it because it was destroyed by earthquake, I don't think there will be some questions on that. The balance of interest between the historical value, tourism value of that, as against the partiality with a certain religion. Mas malaki siguro ang controlling interest nung historical value ng church.
Yeah, dahil some weeks ago, I was in Baraswain, no? In church doon.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And kung yun medyo madamage ang earthquake, I don't believe there would be any objection if the state provides some amount for its repair dahil historic talaga. So yun ang secular purpose.
I see, okay.
Pero kung masira halimbawa yung stadium ng Iglesia ni Cristo sa Bukawi, pag nag-allocate ang gobyerno ron,
Baka
maaring ma-question.
Wala pang historical value yun.
Very interesting, ah.
Yeah.
You know, after,
Naglaro yata si Manny Pacquiao dun.
oh, for basketball,
Yes,
yes. Well, after this, I'll be asking about holidays naman, the non-working holidays that are based on religious,
Beliefs.
yung mga observations of ceremonies. But we'll take a short break for now. Legal Help Desk will return after these messages. You're still watching Legal Help Desk with our guests, former Senator Rene Sagisag and Attorney Amado Valdez. Before the break, we left off on holidays naman. So recently, it was declared na non-working days yung January 15 to January 19 in time for the papal visit. So that's only one of those non-working holidays, but we already have some naman yung mga Eid al-Fitr.
Yeah, for Iglesia ni Cristo.
Yes.
Iglesia ni Cristo also we had one holiday, no?
Is this a type of violation of the separation of church and state?
Yung holiday, Metro Manila lang.
Well, in this case, is it
Hindi siguro
I think the whole
national.
national.
Yung non-working
Kasi
days.
kung Metro Manila lang, it's a very practical response to the mobility problem. Talagang walang makakapasok on time dahil ang Korte Suprema yata sinabing half day. Dahil talagang miski wala pa yan, nung Pasko lang, it was impossible to get to your destination.
Right.
So let there be a challenge, but I think it can be sustained in the same manner
on
that
the
in
basis of
our
traffic.
country, Good Friday, Christmas, All Saints Day, holidays. So by the same token, bihirang-bihira naman yung Papa bumibisita rito. So I think any constitutional challenge would probably not succeed.
Now, there are specific cases, no, minsan involving labor, for example, wherein, for example, you have certain beliefs. I believe there's a Supreme Court case where he was in Iglesia ni Cristo, did not want to be part of the union, and therefore he was dismissed because it was a requirement that he be a member of the union, diba? But he invoked his right. There should be separation of church and state and religious freedom, so to speak. Yan ba is covered dyan ng the principle of separation of church and state? Dean, what are your thoughts on that?
We are talking about two concepts.
Two concepts yun. Kasi
Yung separation of church and state is another concept. As I said, yung premise ko nga is it's the protection of government from adventurism of the church later.
This one naman is religious freedom.
Dito naman, this is about the religious freedom.
Okay.
And it's about religious thought. Kasi there are levels of thoughts and where the government can intervene. What you have in mind, what you express, and your actions. So if it's thought, no law or no government can come in and try to intervene with what you are thinking. Although may mga futuristic firms na there are technologies that even try to
Imagine what you're
mirror the
thinking.
thing, but we are going ahead of our...
But can you invoke, let's say, religious freedom?
Action yun
Let's say,
Yung sa Iglesia ni Cristo, it's an action which is expressing a religious belief. Kaya it was upheld by the Supreme Court as an expression of religious belief. So it was that provision exempting them from
being part of a union?
From being
Expelled.
part of the union, if they so profess, was sustained. Religious belief yun.
Okay.
But it was not to help one religious organization, not institutional, but it
Kasi
has
yun ang-
something to do with the belief.
Okay.
What about certain provisions in our law that are similar to some beliefs, like the Catholic belief of marriage being a permanent bond? So, again, this is a question I always hear from some who are lobbying for a divorce law, for instance. They're saying that the annulment law that we have that prohibits divorce but only allows for annulment is based on the Catholic religion. Even yung tayo, di ba, we only have one ground for annulment, which is psychological incapacity. So, would you say that this type of law, which prohibits divorce and only allows annulment, which is very similar to the church-based annulment in terms of grounds, is a violation of this separation of church and state concept?
Well, tayo yata ang one of the few remaining countries.
I think one of two.
One of two.
Yeah, one of
Yeah.
two
The Vatican
countries
being
now
one of them.
bawal
Dahil-
divorce.
Italy itself accepts ang divorces.
Even Spain, yeah.
So we are going that way then. But dito naman sa bansa natin Muslims entitled to 4 wives. I'm a Christian, no limit. I mean, as a practical matter, kakaunti naman na nagpa-file ng concubinage o adultery. So as a practical matter, walang pressure. In fact, kung titingnan mo ang pinakamatataas na opisyalis natin, si Erap, si ganito, si Jojo Binay, trailing sa polls. Lumabas na nga, may mga kulasisi, lalong gumano ng rating. In other words, non-issue in the Philippines. Kasi in the US, wala rin yan until Gary Hart in 1998. Pero yung sina Kennedy, Roosevelt, na nandun na sa kanan ng opisina niya yung kulasisi niya. All the way to Jefferson, Sally Hemings, a black woman. So
the fact that we don't have a divorce, you don't think that it's favoring, that particular law is favoring the Catholic Church?
religion, for
well,
instance.
kasi they all watch the election returns din And the church, miski hindi united, is still isa factor sa election. Kaya very hard for a divorce law
to pass. I see.
Pero to me, I agree with the Pope na yung mga atheists, yung mga divorces, hindi dapat tingnan kung anong morality ng mga yan, kundi judge a person by the manifestation of his entire life and not by the testimony of a single incident or two. In other words, wala siyang nirurule out. Lahat tayo pwedeng makarating sa, preferably, gates of heaven. I may go where my enemies tell me to go.
Now, there's a specific law that became controversial. The RH law was controversial, and there were those who were arguing that those who were against the RH law were supporting a principle of the church and state being together. In other words, there were some people who were commenting that if you are against RH law, then it's like
Being against the church?
or it's basically a church sponsoring the teachings of the Catholic Church, di ba? Is that a valid argument?
Sabi ni Pope, who am I to judge? Melinda Gates is a good Catholic, no? But she has donated billions para sa contraceptives, not for abortion, no? Dahil she agrees na it's killing. Pero who are we to judge Melinda Gates as a Catholic na nagdo-donate ng bilyones for the use of contraceptives? Kaya to me...
So non-issue yung separation of church and state in that particular law?
Well, I don't know if you can challenge it in court
On that basis, oo.
Yeah, kaya dito, RH, Sinoynoy is for RH. Yun naman mga conservatives, ayaw ng birth control, kundi self-control. Kaya para mga kuneho tayo, more than 100 million.
Ang issue yata dyan sa yung RH law is when is a person a person? Ano bang kailan person yan inside the body? And therefore, if you use contraceptive, you are killing. So that's the issue.
That's the issue, yeah.
And the church moves it further down, no? Parang tao na agad yung...
At the time of conception
So it's a scientific definition of who is a person and the religious definition of who is a person. But in terms of state policy, siguro that should not be the issue, because the balancing of interest is about population control. Do we have the capacity to support X number of population? So if we don't have that capacity, therefore we have to do some family planning. I think this is more the issue in the RHs. But for purposes of advocacy, in winning people's support, ando dun yung, because it's a very emotional context yung pinapatay mo yung bata So who does not agree with that against killing? So it becomes a potent argument on the part of the church, moving further the definition of a person.
What about donations?
Yeah.
We have some provisions which exempt donations to the church, for instance. Is this part of the concept of violating the separation of church and state?
Well, donations are, whether it's the church or not, it's a voluntary thing. But the question is, do you have to tax it? Di ba may mga donors tax
yan,
et cetera. And as far as the church is concerned, it's not considered an income. Kaya they're exempted yung... Although under the Constitution, what is exempted as far as taxation is concerned, your real estate tax. When it is used directly and exclusively for religious purposes. In fact,
So
educational institutions are also entitled to that.
Yeah, so this is not just the Catholic Church per se. So even if
Yes.
it's a Muslim mosque, if it's used for a religious purpose, it's not subject to real property
Ang
tax.
rational kasi dyan is the churches have their function also. And in fact, parang katulong na siya ng government, ng state, in taking care of the morals. And the rationale there is the church, when it receives these funds, they're using it to enhance the moral fabric of people. So in that context, it is also a partnership between the church and the state.
Okay.
Well, in one case, nag-donate lang ng 10,000 sa isang pare. Sinabi ng Korte Suprema, taxable daw yun So, very tricky. But I agree na talagang religions are really serving a useful purpose and should be exempted. Pero yun nga, napakahirap to qualify. Hindi naman ako pwede magtayo ng iglesia ni Sagisag ngayon at nakakuha ng 100 members. And I can do that, but cannot claim tax exemption. Miski sabihin kong, Panginoong Jesucristo, 12 lang sila nag-umpisa Pero, in other words, Lalo si Kay Menares will tax anything that moves.
Okay, very interesting so
Okay.
far, and we still have a lot of
We have a
issues
ton of questions, yeah.
relating to the separation of church and state. So stay tuned. Legal Help Desk will return after these messages. You're still watching Legal Help Desk with Senator Rene Sagisag and Attorney Amado Valdez.
Okay, so we were discussing earlier off air, no? In situations when the church gets really vocal on certain things, no? We all know about we mentioned the RH bill, and sometimes they will come out with a memo or not a memo, but they'll mention it in the homily, who you should vote or who you should not vote. And then may mga certain qualifications doon. Minsan, of course, based on the qualifications, alam mo nang sinong fini-favor nila. They'll mention things like yung mga hindi nagbababae or whatever. Yun ba, is that a situation where there's a violation of the principle of separation of church and state?
Well, again, it may depend on the situation. Dahil nung umiiral pa yung walang habag batas militar, tuwan-tuwa kami na may mga obispo sumisipa.
Correct, yes. Oo.
Talagang labayen, klaber, they were very few. And then eventually, Cardinal Sin. And he called out the people on February 22.
Correct, yes.
And that ended the dictatorship.
Yes.
But in a time of normalcy, I think out of prudential considerations, let's keep it to the noisy politicians and laymen. Dahil napakarami nilang dapat gawin to tend to their flock. Kaya I have mixed feelings on allowing the churches,
Be vocal about
hindi lang Catholic, no, mga iba, to be so active when there are enough noises and sounds of democracy coming from the lay sector.
Yeah,
Kaya it's a question of prudence.
Dean
I'll
Amado,
add to that kay Rene, no? Because I look at it from the standpoint of decision making. When I said about balancing of interests. Because when you interpret these provisions as applied on specific circumstances, I think in my analysis of Supreme Court decisions, saka Philippine decisions, the judges are thinking about a creeping interference on the part of the church. So if they see that there is a creeping interference, they reach a point when that interference could be clear and present. There's already a clear and present danger. That's why you cannot say black and white as far as whether a law or an action is against the Constitution or not. No, it's violative of the Constitution. But it is circumstantial. When there's a clear and present danger that creeping intrusion would now interfere and control the policies, the policy making of the church, the governors of the church, then the Supreme Court will come in. Unconstitutional na yan. It's already violating that wall that separates the church from the state.
Dean Amado, on a practical level, for instance, if you have a congressman and a senator and they have a bill about a certain law, and they ask, as part of the resource speakers, the representatives from the Catholic Church, would that be a violation of the separation of church and state? Kasi this might be construed as favoring one religion. Bakit sila lang yung tininanong or pinapakinggan?
They are consulting. Because they are part of the body politic. Their voice should also be heard. Wala namang, hindi naman pigeonhole ito that church, state, etc. It's one big ocean na halo-halo yan eh. And when that ocean becomes poisonous, that's when the court intervenes.
Okay.
In fact, if my fading memory is true, parang nabasa ko kahapon, kasama yata si Bishop Bacani, at Father Bernas, yung sa grupo ng Constitutional Commissioners urging support for the BBL, itong Bangsamoro Law. And to me, I see nothing wrong with that. Yun, as citizens yun eh. Dahil they were members of the Constitutional Commission.
Constitutionalists.
And I agree with them dahil yung problema yan dates back to centuries ago. So sabi nga ni Justice Holmes, it is an experiment as all life is an experiment. Kaya to me, hail Bishop Bacani, hail Father Bernas for joining the other former commissioners.
Yeah, I'll take that a step further. No? There were, in the past, there were cases where a priest would run for governor or mayor. And is that within the realm of the principle of separation of church and state, the prohibition of clergymen, religious leaders becoming secular leaders or civil leaders?
Merong decision of the merong law before which prohibited members of the clergy from participating in electoral process, and this was upheld by the Supreme Court. But eventually, I think the Supreme Court had relaxed on that. But to the credit of the Catholic Church, in the case of Governor Panlilio of Pampanga, when he ran, he made a very obvious break from the church. Nag-resign siya or he took his leave of absence para
be able to run.
It will not be interpreted as violating the church and state. So there is a difference between concept and practical application. So you might be doing it as a concept maski violative, pero in applying it, you are able to circumvent it in order to prevent that theory from applying on that particular action.
Okay. What about certain practices that are being carried by public officers? I've attended some court hearings wherein the sala of the judge will start off with a prayer. So that's obviously government premises, government time. Is that a violation of the separation of church and state?
Well, sa Amerika, nakakalito yung mga decisions yan eh, na may mga decision saying na no prayer in schools, public schools. Meron namang mas relax, kaya it's moving, no, meaning it's a continuum depending on the particular set of circumstances. Dahil ano sila meron sign, in God we trust.
So that alone will already...
Dito rin sa Constitution natin, providence, etc.
And even when they take their oath to say the truth, when they take the witness stand, I think it's a Bible that they put their hand on, right?
Yung sinite na example ni Karen is, ang masama doon you conduct your court in prayer. Pero when you decide, you don't conduct it in prayer.
But is that
there are other
questionable?
considerations other than your fear of God ang ginagamit mo sa decision na yun.
But in that case, can you file a
To
case
question?
questioning that practice of starting off with a
Well,
prayer?
halimbawa,
in
dahil
court?
every session ngayon starts with a prayer. And parang ecumenical yata
Ecumenical naman.
Yeah. So, mahirap siguro ang challenge yan. But may mga atheists siguro who may complain. Dahil yun nga, as pointed out, a right to believe includes a right not to. Like, right to speak includes a right not to speak. Kaya yun nga, doon sa isang email ko, mayroong isang very ardent atheist na talagang challenge lahat eh. So in the end, ang solution nga natin dyan, let it be questioned if we may start. Kasi kami sa Senado pag umpisa namin dun, talagang nag-uumpisa rin kami magdasal Kanya-kanyang prayers. But I doubt if in this country you can outlaw yung
prayer or
especially
anything like
kung hindi naman masasabing promoting any particular sect.
Well, in that case, Catholic religion.
Yeah.
At saka hindi justiciable yun, Karen, because may prayer. Kung ayaw mo nung prayer na yun, nung lumabas ka, ang masama, if the judge cites you for contempt and imposes fine on you for not participating in the prayer, then you can question it. That's a violation of your right to not to believe in what the judge is doing.
Okay. So very helpful tips
Yeah,
here, no?
there's still a ton of questions
Yes.
right here, but
We'll discuss that more
We'll discuss
after
later,
this break.
yeah.
So Legal
All right.
Help Desk will return, so stay tuned. Welcome back to Legal Help Desk with our guests, former Senator Rene Sagisag and Attorney Amado Valdez.
okay, we're discussing the principle of separation of church and state. Now, in a recent case, and I think everyone knows about this, most recently, we know about Mr. Carlos Cedran. There was a decision about him, the conviction being upheld by the Court of Appeals. And there were some quarters who were bringing up the issue of separation of church and state because under the same principle, no law shall be passed to favor a particular religion. That's correct, right? Now, in this case, maybe his own belief is that he doesn't believe in the Catholic Church. And by curtailing his freedom to express that, were we not favoring the Catholic Church? These were people who were arguing the case. No? Do you think that by curtailing someone's freedom of expression, we were in a way that the court is in a way favoring the Catholic Church?
Well, again, balancing yan expression. Dahil may kwento na merong immigrant from Ireland swinging his arms wildly in New York and struck a policeman on the nose. Suhulihin. Sabi niya, but I'm in the home of the brave and land of the free. I can swing my arms anytime and any way I want to. Young man, you're right to swing your arm ends where my nose begins. So dito, paano mong babalansehin nga yan? Talagang lahat ng complaints sila ma-accommodate naman, I think, within the system. Like unusual schedule natin because of the papal visit. Yes. Pinagbibigyan ng madla, pinagbibigyan din ng simbahan. Kaya ngayon, may skeletal forces in the courts. So, it's a problem-solving situation to accommodate, to the extent possible, all the valid competing claims.
But in this case, the imprisonment of Mr. Carlos Cedran was based on a revised penal code provision about basically offending
yung kasing batas na yun, Karen, Rod, is just a statutory expression of a higher law. In the higher law, there's a season for everything. There's a time to cry, there's time to smile, which means that if you rant that offends the sensibilities of people, and particularly in that church where people are worshiping, yung statutory provision is just to protect that higher law. That you have to use your God-given gift of expression, of talking, of crying at the right time and the right moment. Otherwise, there will be chaos. There will be disorder. You disturb public order because there must be some kind of responsibility on your part in the exercise of your rights.
What about this situation in the United States, for instance, where there was a whole, there were a community, but basically there were some underage women and some polygamous partnerships, meaning they found that the men were usually in their 40s or 50s, tapos yung mga napapangasawa nila or yung ginagawa nilang wives would be below 18 years old. But when the government took away the women or separated them and tried to prosecute the men, they were saying that they were only exercising the religion. So if that were to happen here na meron tayong mga iba that will say that this is in accordance with the religion, na pwede silang magpakasal sa isang babae na below 18, is that going to be a violation of the separation of church and state if the state were to prosecute them?
There is this community standards that also tries to regulate your expressions. They have the right to have polygamous marriage in their mind, but if their action would violate community standards, then the state has the right to interfere. Kaya in the states that was upheld, the right of the state to close this. Texas ito, I think you're referring to that Texas incident where there was polygamous marriage. And the act of the state there was upheld. The religious freedom was subsumed to the power of the state to regulate the action of the individual.
Senator Dean, do you know of a particular case that was filed invoking this principle, separation of church and state, and the Supreme Court categorically said, yes, there should be separation of church and state, so this thing should stop? Has there been such a decision where the Supreme Court said, yes, there's definitely a violation of the principle of separation of church and state?
I don't know if it was a specific case, but remember when Spain ceded the Philippines to the U.S., and it included properties of the church.
Of the church, yeah.
Okay. And the instruction there was you have to make a difference between the properties of the church and the properties of the crown, because there was a unity of church and crown in Spain,
at that time,
although it was not formally adopted here, but in practice it was so. So nung dumating yung mga Americans, they separated the properties which belonged to the Spanish crown from the management and administration of the Catholic Church. But I don't remember if it was a challenge.
Yung isang case, yung pagsaludo sa bandera ng Jehovah's Witnesses. Sa Amerika yon, yung West Virginia Board of Education yata. Una, sinabing hindi pwede. Pero na-reverse on reconsideration, doon nga nag-dissent si Frankfurter na sinabing sila mga Hudyo, not insensitive to. Nung dumating sa atin yan, I think in the final decision ni Justice Carolina Grino Aquino, Ebralinag ba yun?
Ebralinag case.
Ebralinag,
yes.
Sustaining the right not to have to salute. So, other than that, I think generally...
But assuming, let's say there's a situation where, let's say LGU, for example, donated property to a particular church. Can someone, a taxpayer, file a case against the LGU and using this provision, this principle of separation of church and state, nullify that donation?
Well, in the first place,
happened? Meaning,
No, well, hypothetically, can it,
may alam ba tayo na nag-donate dahil...
or favored
Meron isang barangay na nag-raise ng funds. Tapos bumili sila ng statue.
Estenso.
Pinahiram nila sa church, and the church refused to give it back, and invoking separation of church and state. Pero they were not sustained. The church was not sustained because it's
funded by the
barangay. Sa uli niya yun because it's
But for those
case of
viewers,
Estenso yan sa Leyte.
so for our viewers out there, if you're a member, for instance, of a barangay, and you know that the barangay captains, or for instance, your LGUs, they're using government funds for a certain procession na kunwari sa Catholic Church, yung mga santo na meron tayo procession,
technically,
can you question that as using taxpayers' money to favor the Catholic Church?
Well, I guess it will depend kung ang secular purpose is permissible, no? Like yung...
Flores de Mayo, again.
ngayon ko lang nadidinig yung traslasyon. Nung araw, nung bata kami, prosesyon lang ang tawag namin dun eh. And that would require really expenditure of public funds, assigning so many policemen. Pero secondary lang yung religion doon to the secular purpose of preserving order. Kaya that's a fine line. Pero yung outright donation of property for the use of, say, iglesia ni Sagisag, ay hindi siguro
And you can
lulusot yun.
and you can file a
And
case based on
deploying
that.
police to monitor a procession is different from funding the procession itself.
Dahil yun eh,
Peace and
So kung
order.
yung-
you have a duty to preserve peace
Yeah.
and order,
Pero
to
kung yung-
clean up.
Yes, pero kung yung pera na ginagamit sa procession is funded by the LGU, can you question
Questionable,
that? Okay.
at the least.
Thank you
Okay.
for clarifying that. It's a very interesting
Yeah,
topic.
very interesting
and
topic because it
relevant
involves
as well.
the a very high, should I say, in the hierarchy of freedoms. The freedom of religion and the freedom to express that religion is very high.
Thank you. I hope we were able to clarify,
Yes.
especially for those wondering, is this undue attention for the papal visit? And I hope we were able to answer the questions in your heads.
All right, so that's all the time that we have for tonight. We'd like to thank our guests, former Senator Rene Sagisag and Dean Amado Valdez, Chairman Emeritus of the Philippine Association of Law Schools, for being with us tonight. I'm Attorney Rod Nepomuceno.
And I'm Attorney Karen Jimeno. If you have any questions about our topic for tonight, you may post these on our Facebook and Twitter pages. Join us again next Monday as we discuss your legal rights. Good night.
For the building of a church, bawal po ba yan? Bawal yung mga ganun?
Building a church.
Or let's say you're
mukhang
donating a piece of land so that the Catholic Church can build a church there. Bawal yung mga ganun.
out of the question yata yun.
Oh, so
What is
yung-
rehabilitating? For instance, we had the Bohol earthquake, and one of the churches that was really destroyed is the Lubok Church. So, kung government funds ang gagamitin para i-rehabilitate yon on the argument that this is very important for the Filipino culture and history, is that justifiable or will it?
Government funds?
Yes,
Government.
to rehabilitate,
a
rehabilitate
church.
and
Yeah.
reconstruct yung church sa Bohol na nasira ng earthquake.
I would doubt the constitutionality nun.
Okay.
Dahil
Unless it was a historical
sisipa
site.
ang mga ibang religions, hihingi din ng similar funding. Kaya I would personally doubt if that would be a constitutional arrangement. Yung to rebuild, say, a church destroyed by Yolanda.
Unless it's a tourism site and a heritage site that
May
I guess
ganun ba exception
may mga
na
ganun ba na-
sasabihin nila tourism or heritage
Dean,
site?
what would you say in a situation like that?
You can answer all these questions doon sa basic philosophy ng separation of church and state. As I was saying, ito yung institutional partnership eh. If you speak of that provision, it speaks of the church as an institution being in partner with the state as an institution.
Okay.
So with this together,
You
ayaw
cannot-
na natin as a matter
you
of
cannot have that,
policy. Yung sinasabi mo, I think you said about tourism,
Yes.
saka heritage.
Ako, I was in the classroom. Good Friday.
Okay. Yeah.
Kasi yun ang kultura doon eh. Dahil mga Hudyo yata ang dominant daw doon. And Felix Frankfurter said in one case na one belonging to my minority cannot be insensitive to religious freedom. Ngayon naman, si Pope, head of the church, head of state then.
So,
Kaya like in 1933, nagkaroon din ng Eucharistic Congress. Ang tinutulak dyan yung secular aspect. Kaya incidental lang itong nangyayari na mga holidays, etc. Dahil hindi yun nangyari lang sa Quiapo, ilang milyones daw yun.
Black
So our
Nazarene.
country cannot be insensitive then to the feelings of a vast majority of Filipinos. So they can always challenge it. Dahil yan din ang ginawa noong 1933.
Okay.
And the Supreme Court came out on the side of secular activity, incidental lang.
What do you mean Senator, by when you say that the separation of church and state shall be inviolable as per the Article 2, Section 6 of the Constitution? What does that exactly mean? Maybe, Dean, maybe you'd like to give it a shot. No?
Yeah, yung separation of church and state, from my view, because of the historical context, this is protection of government from the church. Remember yung Inquisition, kasi for hundreds of years, evolution ng power of governance.
Basis naman na, kasi then, you're also violating perhaps the freedom of religion of the person or the professor who wants to pray before class. So, ano yung tama dito sa ganitong situation?
Well, ang constitutional and institutional arrangement natin, to the extent possible, accommodation. Kaya nung ako nasa Rizal High, halimbawa, may option kami to attend religious instruction in a building across Rizal High. So, ganun din na kailangang walang hostility ang state against any religion, but it should not favor any religion either. It should not have an established church, no? Yan ang establishment clause na nga eh. Kaya dito, each culture will have to find its way. We'll have to find the Filipino arrangement. Kasi dito sa atin, minsan pupunta ako doon sa lumang courthouse ng Makati. Wala akong daanan dahil nagmimisa. Immaculate Conception daw. Eh yun, napakahigpit sa Amerika. Bawal ang mga santo, bawal ang mga... dito, bawat building na nakikita ko, meron santo eh.
So in the Philippine context po, basically what you were saying earlier, we shouldn't favor. So in a way, you can't have a state-sponsored religion. Is that correct? So in a nutshell, if I will simplify that, perhaps, is it possible, let's say, for tax money to go to something that's religious? Let's say if the Philippine government, for example, donates something to the church for
Good evening. You are watching Legal Help Desk. This show is about making the law work for you by giving legal advice on topics that matter to you. I'm Attorney Karen Jimeno.
And I'm Attorney Rod Nepomuceno. Tonight, we'll discuss the separation of church and state.
Our guests for tonight are former Senator Rene Sagisag and Attorney Amado Valdez, Chairman Emeritus of the Philippine Association of Law Schools. Good evening and thank you for being with us,
Good
gentlemen.
evening.
Good evening, Dean. Good evening,
We have a
Senator.
very intimidating lineup of
I know.
guests.
I know. I'm already nervous.
We have a former Dean,
And-
former Senator.
And I might say an intimidating topic because this is a huge topic, especially in light of the
Ang
papal
dating
visit.
ba namin, mga terorista?
Yes.
Terror teacher.
Yes.
Pero because in light of the papal visit, yeah, and there are a lot of questions on social media whether we gave a due benefit to the Catholic Church and calling 5 days off. Mga ganun, no?
But
Maraming
first, let's
discussion, no?
clarify.
Let's,
What is this whole concept about separation of church and state? And was this observed given the preparations that the government and the whole country gave for the papal visit?
Yeah, maybe we'll start off with the explaining of the principle of the separation of church-state, Senator.
Well, may cultural factor yan eh. Dahil, Karen, nung unang taong ko sa Harvard Law, gulat
Started with the divine right of kings. And then, na-capture ng church yung divine right of kings. Actually, naging proxy na lang yung king. It was actually
The Pope.
divine right of the Pope
Yeah.
of governance. Until the church itself committed abuses with the Inquisition.
Right.
So as a reaction to that, it's one of the most civilized concept. Itong prescription of separation of church and state. Kaya hindi sinama sa Bill of Rights yan eh. Sinama sa Declaration of Policy.
Right.
Because Bill of Rights is more of protection of the individual from the state. Pero inilagay sa article earlier, if you have mentioned,
Policies, yeah.
as another declaration of principle, because we have to always protect the government from the intrusion of the
faith or
church,
religion,
whether belief or non-belief, which could happen in the future,
Just to
that
clarify.
they will impose non-belief. So the government must always be protected from that.
Well, Dean Amado and former Senator Rene, let's go to present-day circumstances. For instance, when I was in law school, we had a professor that would start off classes with a prayer. And I went to University of the Philippines, which is a state university. So in that case, one of our classmates complained and said that we should not be starting off with a prayer. And in the end, I think the complaint was ruled upon favorably because we stopped having those prayers. Is that an example of a separation of church and state? And tama ba yung